Hello and welcome back to WhiteLinesFootball. Lewis again, here today, back for the next episode of the Gillingham podcast. I am back with the New Look podcast. It might look very similar. Of course, on your screen right now, it looks very similar. We have got a guest today. We're going to be talking to Ash a little bit later on. Obviously, he was in the Club I Love that went up on Monday. We're going to be talking to him a little bit later on about Barnsley in our little scout report section in the preview for Barnsley. But a lot more research going into this podcast, a few chats with a few people, a little bit of insight, and it's going to be good. Hopefully we can talk for a bit longer and we can get some proper analysis in, because obviously, like I said, this week was a bit of a relaunch. We're getting there slowly, obviously balancing everyone's personal lives, etc. Work, education, it is quite hard, but we're getting there slowly. But we will get straight into this podcast. We're going to talk, first of all, of course, reviewing the games that have been in the past week. It was just the one. It was the 1-1 draw at Coventry. You can see the vlog for that on the channel. The link will be in the description. I'll chuck that in there. But yeah, it was a 1-1 draw. Obviously, previewed it. I think I was pretty confident of getting the win, and that didn't come. I think a lot more people as well were pretty confident of getting the win. Gills in the blood. Matt on Twitter, he predicted 4-0 Gills as well. That wasn't to be. It was a 1-1 draw. So it started slowly. Obviously, after the 4-1 defeat to Sunderland, it started slowly. We were all over the place defensively again. Obviously, we come out of the blocks. We know that we come out of the blocks. It's the way we're playing this season, and I think it left us pretty exposed at the back. There was absolutely no support from the midfield again. We saw all 4 Sunderland goals. There was a little help from the midfield, especially the second and third one. Bingham and Burn in particular. There was a little adjustment by Lovell. Bingham started at the bottom of the diamond this time, whereas Burn was playing there. Bingham was playing on the left. But Bingham started at the bottom, Burn started on the left, and Regan Charles-Cook started on the right, with Josh Parker in attacking midfield. And apart from that, it was exactly the same for the third game in a row. 20 minutes in, and Lovell had seen enough. He changed it to 4-2-3-1, and it was a bit square peggy. Obviously the back five was the same, and then Bingham and Burn in midfield with Parker on the left, Hanlon on the right, Eves up top, Regan Charles-Cook in behind. But it didn't bring much more joy. Lovell obviously searching around for that extra midfield help, for that defensive cover. It didn't really come. I prefer personally to have that one sitting in front of the defence, but there's also the 2 in the 4-2-3-1. I think we just didn't use the system strength. You've packed the midfield there. You've got a 3 with the 2 covering, and then the 1 attacking one, which is Regan Charles-Cook in his best position. And we weren't really using the system of strength because there was very little help up top. Everyone was trying to come back, so often we were going long to Eves, and we were just eliminating the midfield really. And that's where our strength is, and that's where you should be playing with that system. But it wasn't to be. We were trying to get the ball up to Eves as soon as possible. All that play for out wide and through the middle we saw at Accrington and Sunderland just gone completely out the window, and everyone was getting back. And there, it still wasn't pretty back there. But going forward, it was pretty dire because there was no help for Eves at all. We didn't go through the middle. We didn't get on the ball. We were just going long all the time. Obviously, there were some injuries. A real shame. Mark Burn and Regan Charles-Cook both went off in the first half. Their replacements were Elliot List and Callum Riley. Riley came on for Burn and slotted straight into midfield, and Elliot List came on for Regan Charles-Cook and slotted straight into the attacking midfield role, which was interesting. 4 strikers were on the pitch at that point. I have questioned a little bit whether Lovell is focusing too much on pace, because obviously he speaks about our pace and how it causes teams problems. Zakawani spoke about it as well, our captain. But is he focusing on it too much? Why is Elliot List playing attacking midfield? He has very little trust in Navin Nasseri, who hasn't seen a minute of football this season. If Bradley Stevenson was on the pitch, would he have come on and played attacking midfield? I don't know. But it wasn't pretty, and he did flutter with it a lot in the second half. Obviously, Elliot List scored his goal, but he was playing left wing back at one point. Garmson was playing centre back, and there were so many strikers on the pitch. It wasn't great. But there we go. A little thing I wanted to touch on was the free kick competition. I think previously people spoke about how there's people within the club, I don't think many fans have questioned it, have spoke about how there's a competition going on between Bradley Garmson and Luke O'Neill for set pieces. I think I could speak on behalf of a lot of fans that there is absolutely no competition. Bradley Garmson often failed to get off the floor. His shots haven't been too testing. I think his closest was a save by Stephen Bywater against Burton, but Luke O'Neill is streets ahead of him, I think. I like to have the in-swinger both sides, so I'm happy with Garmson taking free kicks every now and again, but I'd prefer Bingham to take them, to be fair, for crossing ones anyway. For shooting ones, fair enough, Garmson, knock yourself out, but O'Neill is the man for me. We've seen that. He did hit the first man a few times against Coventry, but I think it's definite that O'Neill is streets ahead. Later on in the game, Connor Wilkinson entered the fray, and I think it was absolutely disgusting, some of the abuse that man gets. I'm not his biggest fan, don't get me wrong. I think he's got a lot of potential, but I don't think his attitude is up to it. But some of the hate he gets around me is absolutely diabolical. He will chase the ball, and people will criticise him for not getting there. He will lose a header to an 8-foot centre-back, and people will criticise him for not winning the header. And he'll have a shot that's really well saved, and people criticise him not for scoring. He can do no right in their minds. It's people I sit around. It's absolutely disgusting. Other people around me have mentioned it as well. It's absolutely vile. Lovell spoke and that about how the crowd getting on the back of players is unnecessary and how it's not helpful and all that. And it's not going to be helpful for Connor Wilkinson, is it? He's a player. I don't know if he's a confidence player. I don't know him personally, but he doesn't seem like that. But it's not going to help him. It's not going to help the rest of the team. The fans getting on the back like that. Supporting him, I think, would make a big difference because we've seen he's got talent. We saw the Portsmouth game. The Portsmouth game where he scored an absolute wonder goal. We've seen he can deliver at times, but the hate was absolutely unreal, and I was disgusted by it. I think I will try and get more on camera if I can, but it's absolutely disgusting. But yeah, there were more formation changes late on by Lovell. He did change it. He did go searching. The Tinkerman, the League One Tinkerman was at it, and it didn't look like it was going to come. But what a goal by Elliot List! What a goal! He got in down the left. He took it around about 4 players, chipped it over one, and then straight through the goalkeeper's legs into the bottom corner. What a goal! An early contender, 4th goal of the season. It was brilliant. He's definitely pushing for a start, but he keeps finding the net. He found it in the last 2 games of last season. He found it in pre-season, and his 2nd game back against Coventry, he's found the net, and what a goal it was. Overall, I'm not sure we deserved anything from the game. It wasn't brilliant. It was very scrappy. We played poorly, but good sides, which we're aiming to be this season, good sides have got to go and get results when they're not playing well. We saw it a while ago when we were top of the league. We were playing crap. I remember one game we played really badly against Blackpool. We got 1-0 win. You've got to get results when you're not playing well, and that's exactly what we did. It leaves us on a pretty symmetrical pattern at the minute. We've got 7 points from our first 5 games. Obviously, it stops the rot. I think it was important because we're going to go to Barnsley, who are a very, very good side. And if results don't go our way there, if a result doesn't go our way there, then that would have been 3. Could have been 4 losses in a row, and then you're searching for it. But we started the season well, obviously with 2 wins, 2 losses followed that against 2 good sides in Walsall and Sunderland, and then a point against Coventry, which is probably, you'd probably just about argue that's a fair result. Because we did play poorly, and Coventry probably deserved it more than us. I think we were lucky that they couldn't hit the target because they had a few chances. They haven't scored many this season. I did say that last week, and it obviously showed. They got the goal through Clark Harris, who was unmarked for the header, but Elliot List showed up a little bit of magic from a brilliant young talent at the club, and he showed up, and we got the goal. Coventry lower down the table, but we got a point. We're sitting 9th, which is good. We haven't been great this season, defensively especially. I think that's very clear to see. We've still scored in every game. Defensively, we haven't been great this season, but we sit in 9th, and it's time to rebuild. We'll go to Barnsley after a week off, rebuild, go again, try and get a result, and then obviously we're back into the season, and then the table starts to take shape, and we want to be at the top end of it. So obviously we did talk a little bit about the attackers, the midfielders, and the defenders in the first 3 episodes. So I think it only now makes sense to talk about the goalkeepers. It's the final section in the squad. There's not really too much to talk about in terms of recent news, but we can analyse them a little bit, talk about them a little bit. I just want to shout out Louis Caffarel, obviously Gillingham's third choice goalkeeper at the minute. Getting to know him quite well, talked to him on the regular, met him in person as well, had a nice chat. He's given me a lot of this information, so I shout out to him. I'll tell you what he's given me, because obviously some of it's opinion based and I don't want to get in trouble or anything. But we'll start off with the three goalkeepers, the three professional goalkeepers at the club. Thomas Holy, he is 26 years old. Tom Hadler, he is 22 years old. And Louis Catherall, he is 18 years old. Obviously, he's in his first year of a pro, so he's 18 going on 19. Did just want to check it because I didn't want to get it wrong. I did message him and he wanted to make it very clear that his birthday was the 19th of April 2000. So he's 18 years old. It's three good ages for a goalkeeper, really, isn't it? All of them, well, you'd say Hadler and Caffarel still sort of potential, not at their prime yet. Thomas Holy, you'd say, should be coming into his prime, maybe got a couple of years left to go into it. I do sometimes like an older goalkeeper to be around, obviously like Stuart Nelson with the experience. But these three goalkeepers are very good goalkeepers. We'll start off with Thomas Holy. He's obviously first choice at the club. Last year he played 45 league games, missing just one. That was in the Blackpool game where Hadler was given the gloves. And he's also started all 5 this year. We know he's a brilliant goalkeeper. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Arguably one of the best in League One. Well, definitely one of the best in League One. Sorry, my dog's barking. But arguably the best in League One. Ash thinks he's the best in League One. Obviously, he's coming on a bit later. But, yeah, he was subject to a lot of interest in summer. He's obviously come from abroad. He had to learn the language. He didn't go straight in. Stuart Nelson was obviously still giving him the gloves for a little bit. Also, when we had that Northampton game, where the game that mattered to stay up, Stuart Nelson played, got a clean sheet. So he wasn't trusted straight away under Pennock, but under Lovell, he's very much been his first choice goalkeeper. He was subject to a bit of interest in summer, like I say. The likes of Middlesbrough from the Championship was linked. Crystal Palace was linked. West Ham was linked. And Arsenal was linked as well. 3 London clubs there, so he wouldn't have to move too far at all. If at all, really. Because I do believe he comes from London, up that way. Where he lives, so he comes there for training every day. Yeah, was subject to a lot of interest. Steve Lovell said in his Q&A that there was no interest, but then it was reported very little after that, or not much time after that at all, but there had been interest. But Lovell, that's obviously in the media, the Mirror, so not the most trustworthy sources, but Lovell said there was very much no interest. He hadn't received any offers, but I'm sure definitely a few clubs were looking at him. In terms of price in summer, I think we're probably looking at anywhere upwards of 400k maybe would be good. He obviously only had a year left on his contract, which is not ideal for us at all. Signed a 2.5-year deal when he came in January of last year. But yeah, anywhere upwards of 400k is good. I think if he had longer on his deal, you're probably looking upwards towards 1 million, 800k at least, which would be nice. But I think for that offer, for the money we'd have got for him in January, I think it probably wasn't worth it, because he's quite a vital part of our side and quite a vital part of that defence that was so solid last year that we spoke about. Yeah, I think key parts of his game is a great shot stopper. He pulls out a few worldies. He also has a few errors in him, but we'll come to that in a minute. He pulls out a few worldies, and I think a key part of what he's improved from his game was command in the box. When he first came in, last year's pre-season, everyone questioned his command in his box. You think he's so tall, he's going to come out and catch the ball, but he didn't do that very often. And as the times went on last season, a big shout out to Glenn Johnson, who came in as goalkeeper coach, obviously no longer here anymore. He improved his command in his area massively. I think for me, obviously I'm not a goalkeeper coach, one part I'd improve on his game there is that he shouts keepers very late. I think if you're commanding it, he wants to be shouting keepers early, make sure that everyone knows it's his, and then he's obviously battling with the attackers to get the ball, because the defenders listen to him, duck, etc. But as he's improved at claiming the ball, that's the main part of that that's improved. But it's only a little thing. He does catch 90% of things. I think at Walsall we saw him drop the ball on Luke O'Neill's head or something and catch it straight off him. But yeah, he's a great goalkeeper. Glenn Johnson also said on Twitter that he's focused on drag backs. So at Walsall we saw, I don't know who it was off the top of my head, I remember the highlight, winger or an attacker got in down the left and they pulled it back, and there was a shot that Holy got down to save really well. Holy has struggled sometimes with reaching the corners because of his height. It's hard to get down. But Johnson was happy, even though he's not at the club anymore. He's happy of Holy getting that because they've worked on it in training. He does have the odd error, like I say. I think a few times, even this season, we've seen him letting goals that he probably should have saved. I think Sunderland's first goal, Chris Maguire's header, comes to mind straight away, where he just didn't claw it out. It's hard for him to get down. But he does have a bag of potential, and that's why he's worth so much. You know, he's a massive height for a goalkeeper. He's improved a lot, and he's going to keep doing that. Like I say, he's probably still got a few more years till he reaches his peak. 28, your reaction time's peak. So as a goalkeeper, he's got more time for that to improve as well. And I don't think he'll be at the club too much longer, because I think he's a brilliant keeper. He should be playing at least mid-championship. We'll move on to Tom Hadler. He's also a brilliant goalkeeper. He's obviously signed a new deal in the summer. He's come up through the academy, which is brilliant to see. He's 22 years old. We've seen a few times how much of a brilliant goalkeeper he is. In pre-season, there's one particular period of play that really sticks out to me at Dartford. In that game, he made a brilliant double save. Excuse me. And I think it was really clear that he was pushing Holy all the way. You know, Lovell said in pre-season that Holy was still his number one, but Hadler was pushing him. And I think if we were to lose Holy, Hadler would be a more than adequate replacement. Maybe, obviously, we'd have to get one more in, because I'm not sure Caffarel's ready for the bench yet, regularly to be called upon in the first team. But I think Hadler would be more than capable to be a first-choice goalkeeper. I think if he wanted to go to League 2, he'd be a brilliant first-choice goalkeeper there, maybe even a lower League 1 team. But for us as well, I think he'd be good. But obviously, Thomas Holy is ahead at the minute. I did hope that he would have a go in the Millwall game in the Cup. That wasn't to be. Obviously, we went out on penalties. Thomas Holy saved one of the four he faced. But obviously that's more or less a guessing game. Holy did go the right way, but didn't manage to get to them. Obviously, like I say, struggles to get down sometimes. But I think Hadler probably should play in the Checkatrade Trophy. Obviously, players have to have a number of appearances, etc. But I think Hadler hopefully will play in the Checkatrade Trophy, because he does deserve minutes. Maybe the FA Cup as well later this season, and the Kent Cup, of course, which is still to come. By the way, the first game in the Checkatrade Trophy is next Tuesday, so that'll be before the next podcast. But that's not really worth previewing, because it's a guessing game at the minute. You know, it's hard. Clubs change their squads completely. Results are hard to guess. Anything can happen. So there's no real point in previewing it. Just focusing on the league at the minute. We will mention it a little bit in next week's podcast. But like I say, it would be nice to see Tom Hadler given some minutes there. In his one league game against Blackpool, obviously he conceded 3 goals, but he did start very well. He made a couple of good saves. I think the one thing that stuck out was the first goal his fault. If I remember right, it was a free kick that he fumbled, and at the time it looked like a fumble. The rebound was put in, but there was a deflection, so it may be hard for him to judge. I think he probably still should have held it, but you can't really blame him too much for that, because of the deflection. But I do think he should have held it. But he did impress that day still. He obviously earned himself a new deal, and he's got 1 year left, and you'd like to think he'd be offered a new one, and you'd like to think he'd sign it as well. Finally, we'll move on to Louis Caffarel, who obviously I spoke to. When I saw him for the under-18s at times, I think he looked... Admittedly, I didn't think he was going to get offered a pro deal. I think sometimes he looked a bit shaky. Sometimes he was reluctant to dive, actually. That stuck out to me. But when I saw him in pre-season, he'd impressed me. He made some good saves. His work rate was really good, especially at the Chatham game. Although sometimes maybe that reluctancy to dive crept in. It was only nice on 1 or 2 occasions, but I was watching him warm up. With Henry Lovering, who is the cover team for the under-18s goalkeeper due to Joe Walsh's injury. We'll talk about that soon. But Caffarel was controlling the warm-ups, and it was really, really good. Obviously, the senior goalkeeper coach wasn't at that game, Scott Chalmers-Stevens, but Caffarel was controlling it, and it looked really good, and he knew exactly what he was doing, and knew exactly what he wanted, and he did impress me. He impressed me a lot. His jump when I last saw him for the under-18s, when I saw him playing since he signed his pro deal. He was obviously on loan at Herne Bay. This is what I spoke to him a little bit about. He was playing early on, but he was dropped for a goalkeeper. He made a couple of errors. and obviously him being there and sitting on the bench only benefits Herne Bay. It doesn't benefit Gillingham, and it doesn't benefit Louis Caffarel. So the club called him back, and he did say to me he's very, very happy to be back at Gillingham, so that is jolly good. He's got no youth team goalkeeper pushing him at the minute. Obviously, he's got a 1-year deal. All the pros from last year offered another year, so I would expect him to be offered another year, especially if Lovell's still there at the end of the season. So he progresses, especially if no one coming up. Exactly. The two under-18s goalkeepers, Henry Lovell and Joe Walsh, I mentioned them both earlier. Henry Lovell was brought in as cover, I do believe. This is passing on again information from Louis, because Joe Walsh had a very big injury. He was out for a while. He returned recently. Walsh is back now. So Henry Lovell is in the year prior to getting offered or not offered his pro deal. But like I say, he was only brought in as cover. Joe Walsh is still another season away from that decision. So obviously Joe Walsh, you'd like to think, is the next person coming up, but he's still got a year to go after this season before he gets released or kept on for a pro deal. So you feel like think Louis Caffarel will be kept on as a third choice goalkeeper. We'll move on to those two goalkeepers now. So Lovell was brought in as cover for Joe Walsh, who had a very long injury. Walsh is back now. He's rated very, very highly. He went to a school near where I went. Lewis Hart, my friend, he went to his school. Lewis knew him. He's been in the England setup at youth level. He's rated very, very highly. I'd like to think he's the next big thing coming out of Gillingham. I'd like to think he will be offered a pro deal when it gets there. Obviously, we'll see how what the goalkeeper situation is like at the time, where everyone is in their progression. But I'd like to think Walsh is going to be a big, big thing. He's been involved in England, and that's nice to see at this club. And finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the goalkeeper coach situation. Obviously, Glenn Johnson was our goalkeeper coach last season. A very, very talented coach. He also owns his own business. You have goalkeepers all around the world wearing his stuff. He was a good goalkeeper coach. He bought Holy, particularly on leaps and bounds, like I mentioned earlier. And it was a shame to see him go. It ended in a bad way. I don't know exactly what it was, but the way it seems, it ended in a bad way. Lovell has said that it was time for him to go because he wanted to move closer to home. Like a club close to home. He's now at West Ham Ladies with them, and also doing some stuff at Billericay, so it's close to where he lives in Essex. Johnson said it was sad the way it ended, so I don't know the ins and outs, but hopefully it didn't end on bad terms. He was a very good coach, and Chalmers Stevens has come in, he's returned to the club. Not rated as highly as a coach by the fans. Lovell said he's a good coach. We just hope he can continue to progress the goalkeepers, really, because we do have a good set here, and hopefully we can continue to see that. So the next part of the podcast is called A Change Needed. Don't worry, nothing drastic. I'm not looking for a new manager at Gillingham or anything. I'm just talking a little bit about the personnel. So, like I mentioned earlier, Gillingham named the same side for Coventry that they did against Sunderland, and also that they did against Walsall. Those 3 games were in the space of a week. Obviously, Saturday, Wednesday, and then Saturday again. And I think a lot of people can agree that the squad looked a little bit tired on the Saturday. Specifically, I think a lot of people said about Billy Bingham. Obviously, he's had his injury problems. He's been taken off in a lot of the games. Luke O'Neill's been taken off in a couple of games as well. Like Tom Eaves hasn't had a pre-season. So I think it is important to rotate the squad, especially when you're playing so many games in a week. Or when it comes to the Christmas period, when there are a lot more games. You want to be rotating your squad and not be scared of it. I think Lovell spoke about depth a lot of the time. And, it's time for him to use it. The likes of... Well, I spoke earlier about Navin Nasseri. He's not been used a number of times. Bradley Stevenson has been called upon at times, but he's been playing out of position. He's been playing deeper. He's been playing at right wing back. Navin Nasseri would have fitted in perfectly. I know List hasn't had minutes either, but Navin Nasseri would have fitted in perfectly against Coventry to come on. But he turned to List, which suggests he still doesn't trust Nasseri, despite him looking impressive in recent games. I think the likes of Wilkinson, Nasseri, List, Riley, Lacey and Josh Rhys are all claiming, looking at minutes that could do a job. Someone else to mention is Connor Ogilvie, of course. He's joined today on loan until the end of the year, so until the start of the January transfer window. For me, smart signing. He covers left back, he covers centre back. At centre back, we've got 3 senior ones, then Finn O'Mara as well as Jack Tucker and Ryan Huckle. I think if Lacey Lacey has injury problems. If he gets injured, then your next centre-back in line is Finn O'Mara. We've had times this season where we've not had a centre-back on the bench because of Lacey's injuries. Simpson's come on, maybe to cover Garmston's injury problems at left-back. So if Lacey was to pick up another long-term injury, the next centre-back in line is O'Mara. So Ogilvie can cover that position. He can also cover left-back, where Garmston has had a very slow start to the season. He's had his injury problems, and Aaron Simpson is still young. So it does make sense. I did actually suggest it on Twitter a while back. I just don't think he's a brilliant player. I think he struggled a lot last season. He stood off people too long. He didn't show much pace or attacking intent, especially when playing wing-back. Oh, excuse me. But it's a smart signing because he covers both areas, and that's what we needed. He's come in, and I think he'll be definitely aiming to get in that team over Brady Garmston at left back. So I think a lot of the change needs to happen in personnel, but also I was wondering, do we need to change the system? Lovell's used a diamond to start every game so far this season, all 6 of them, including Millwall, in the Cup. But recently he has changed it early on in both games. Obviously, I mentioned earlier it took him 20 minutes to change against Coventry. He also changed it early against Sunderland, and he also eventually changed it against Walsall, going to the 4-3-3. Now, the pros of the diamond, I'm a big fan of the system. Obviously, Zinedine Zidane, the best manager in the world, arguably won 3 times Champions Leagues in a row. He used it to a brilliant extent at Real Madrid. I think if he was to go to Juventus, he'd use it there as well. It does allow all of our talented players to fit in. Obviously, we know our strength is in midfield, and the depth we have in midfield is unreal. Obviously, we spoke about that before. The injury problems have really caused a damage to our system at the minute, with 3 midfielders injured, Charles Cook-Burn and Rhys, and Parrott as well. Obviously, Josh Rhys back now. We'll speak about that in a little bit, but the midfield is where it's at. You know, we have Rhys, Parrott, Riley, Byrne, Bingham, and Charles Cook, who are all the brilliant, sort of top end ones. We have Navin Nasseri there, Bradley Stevenson there. Then we have Chapman and Oldacre as well, and other players who could play there, such as Max Amer and Alex Lacey, who've both played defensive midfield at times under Lovell. So yeah, it does work well. If it allows us to fit our talented players in, and the way it works is the wide midfielders, to speak, are meant to cover the fullbacks. I think in Lovell's first game at Peterborough away, when we won 1-0, that was shown to a really good extent. Mark Byrne and Jake Hesenthaler put in really good performances in the wide midfield areas to cover the fullbacks. But there is naturally less cover because of the wingers aren't there. When you play with wingers, they track back and cover the fullbacks. It's not rocket science, or you develop a system so that certain wingers don't have to. Obviously, like Hazard, Salah, if you're so good, you're allowed an exempt. That normally happens at the top level. At this level, they're normally expected to track back. We don't play with that, and I don't think our midfielders have been covering too far. That could be due to our attacking intent. They haven't covered so much, sorry. It does allow you as well to have a defensive midfielder, an attacking midfielder, and 2 strikers, which are 3 very much desired things in football. But like I say, you can't then play with wingers. FIFA fans might remember the 4-1-2-1-2 wide. That does not exist in real life. I don't care who you are, you cannot tell me that exists in real life. But yeah, like I say, we've gone to the 4-3-3. We went to that against Walsall. We went to the 4-2-3-1 against Coventry and Sunderland early. We've also used the back 3 at times, but that is when chasing the game late on. Or in other situations where it's a very drastic need. I don't think we started with that at all, and I don't think Lovell's wanted to go to that at all. He's also gone to the 4-4-2 at times, which I find really interesting, because Lovell has said, wingers is the last thing I'd ever do. 4-4-2 is the last formation I'd ever play, but he's doing it. And I think if we were to change from the diamond, we're in a bit of a predicament because we didn't sign any wingers. We're not going to get anyone else in, and obviously you need wingers, so we'll be playing players out of position. We have no wingers. The players that are going to play there, you've got like Josh Parker, Elliot List, who have played out wide, Brandon Hanlon as well. But apart from that, you're going to push Brady Garmston on, you're going to push Aaron Simpson in. Who else are you going to play out wide? There's no natural wingers in there, and I think a lot of fans are calling for it, but it didn't happen. But I'd have liked to have 1 or 2. In my opinion, we have the players for the diamond system, but the midfield just has holes. Lovell spoke a lot about holes again. We'll get to that in the next section of the podcast. But I think the midfield needs to get back and cover. They need to be showing that desire, that energy to get back and cover. I think the switch to move Billy Bingham to the bottom of the diamond was a good thing. I think he protects the defence a lot better than Mark Byrne does. Obviously, we saw at Walsall, Mark Byrne again didn't protect the defence too well. So I think Mark Byrne's best position is by far centre midfield on one of those sides. I think he's a definite starter there. And the other one I'd like to see is Callum Riley. You know, Dean Parrott also in for a call, but the question is whether he can get up and down the pitch. He's used to playing at the bottom of the diamond for us at the minute. And then, like I say, we've got depth there. And then Billy Bingham as well. Regan Charles-Cook plays on one of the sides, but there's obviously talk about him playing further forward when he comes back from injury. But again, that's a different story. You can hear more of that on the podcast from last week if you want to check that out. I do think there's the players for a diamond system. I'd like to see Bingham at the bottom, Byrne and Riley on either side when everyone's fit. They're the players that are going to get up and forward. Maybe if we were a bit better, technically I'd like to have Dean Parrott in there, but obviously teams are going to come on to us. We're not the best side in the division. If we were, I'd like to have Dean Parrott in there, but maybe that's considered a bit of a luxury. I'd like us to stick with the diamond. I'm not sure if Lovell will. But I think if we do were to change to a winger system, there'd be plenty of square pegs in round holes, like we saw with the 4-2-3-1. We have 4 strikers on the pitch, all playing across that 3. That's not ideal. You look at the good teams that have played a 4-2-3-1, you look at the Chelsea, etc., etc. The Rotherhams, even at this level, they play a 4-2-3-1 sometimes, obviously in the Championship, but they played it last season as well. You need the wingers. I don't think we have the personnel for that. So I'd like to see us stick with the diamond. I'd just like us to work on that midfield a bit more. I'd also like us to rotate a bit more because the players are tired. Lovell spoke about depth. It's time to use it. It's time to get back onto the form we had at the start of the season. So the final section before we preview the Barnsley game is going to be called Week in the Media. This is going to be on the podcast every single week as we look at what the players have been saying, what the manager's been saying in the media in the week. This includes press conferences, interviews, newspapers, etc., etc. Speaking of press conferences, we'll start with Lovell's press conference yesterday. He mentioned strength in depth. He said he's confident. He said injuries were going to come. And he said he's got numbers in. Because of that, obviously, we are struggling with injuries at the minute. Josh Rhys is back, which is absolutely massive, considering that Charles-Cook, Parrott and Byrne are all injured. Obviously, I think it's a little bit hypocritical because he hasn't used his depth at all. Maybe he's just not wanted to change a winning team. Maybe he's just not wanted to trust the players. We obviously know what he's like with youth players a little bit. He wants to bed them in very slowly. Bradley Stevenson's getting his chance obviously now a little bit. But we want to see Lovell using his depth, and obviously he spoke in the press conference about depth and he spoke about how that's key, which is nice to see. He spoke about transfers. Obviously the loan window closes today. We now know that Conor Ogilvy's come in as cover. He did say previously that he didn't want to get anyone in the KM, but he's got someone in. He said he didn't know if it'd be done, but it has been done. I think it benefits Tottenham. I think it benefits Ogilvy, and I think it benefits Gillingham. But he said no one's leaving. No one will be leaving on loan, so that is the business done now for Gillingham. Also following up on Lovell's presser, Callum Riley, he spoke. He was the player to speak to the media the game before, a vice captain. You know, he just speaks about Barnsley quite a bit. He speaks about how it's going to be a tough test. He speaks about numbers. He speaks about leaders. Obviously, him being vice captain, but he said there are a number of leaders around. And he said I think the main thing that sticks out to me is he spoke about how the week off, how important the week off had been from a game. He said everyone's got their energy levels back, and obviously everyone looked knackered. So I think that's key, and hopefully Lovell's learnt his lesson from that. Press conferences were short, but the Kent Messenger had a fair bit in it. Lovell spoke about changes. He said we may make a few changes because obviously the tiredness. Obviously there's been a week off. Riley said that the energy levels are back, but I think it's still important to rotate and give players, make sure players are at their best and not just play them for the sake of their name. You want to play them when they're fit. Another thing, he spoke about being too open. He said we're going forward, we're creating chances and scoring goals, but we're being too open. He obviously tried to address that at Bingham and Byrne swapping. Obviously only 1 goal was conceded, which opposes to the 6 conceded in the previous 2 games. So maybe that's something we'll see a bit more of, Bingham playing deeper. But he spoke about being too open. He said we've addressed it, and hopefully we'll see that. He said that excuse me. He said that's due to going all out to score straight away. And he said that maybe sounds like he's learned. He said maybe we need to give a bit more respect to Barnsley, give a bit more respect to sides, know when to sit back, counter, etc. That's what Zakuani spoke about in his part of the KM, but we'll get to that in a minute. He spoke about not going all out, did Lovell, not being too open. And I think last year I criticised him a little bit when we went ahead, like to Charlton and other games like that, Charlton away, of just sitting back too much. This time it looks like he wants to start games quick. He obviously spoke about starting games quick. Lovell basically said that starting games quickly allows us to get on the front foot and then teams have to come at us, which gives more space and we want to get early goals. But he spoke about getting a little bit more respect, and maybe he's acknowledged that sometimes you can break teams down and not concede early, which is important, which we did against both Sunderland and Walsall. So it seems like we're going to go to Barnsley, give them a little bit more respect, which is really good because I think it's necessary, because they are definitely a team that could blow us away if we don't do that. But yeah, hopefully that's a good thing. Hopefully we've addressed that, and hopefully we're going to be a little bit more solid. Josh Rhys is back. Lovell said he was the fittest in pre-season. It sounded like he was going to start from the off. Great to see him back, especially good timing considering Burn and Charles Cook are injured. He speaks a little bit about the injuries. He said Burn won't be too long. It sounds like Charles Cook's going to be a little bit longer than Burn. He said rather than 2 weeks now, it's probably going to be 4 weeks because he tried to play on. Lovell did praise his character because of that, but I think, is that not the physio's job to take him off? The physio would have said to him, you need to come off. And Charles Cook might have gone, no, I want to play on, but that's the physio's decision. He needs to get the players fit, and that's the main thing. He should be making that decision. But Charles Cook and Burn out injured, and Dean Parrott is also another week away. Zakuani is the guy doing the talking in the paper this week, obviously the club captain. He said he wants to score more goals, which I found interesting. He's obviously nearing to 50 games now for Gillingham. He hasn't scored yet. He did score in a pre-season friendly. But he's not got a competitive goal for Gillingham yet, obviously only playing the league already for us. He's not got a competitive goal yet, and he said he wants to score more goals. He said he wants to attack it like he does defensively in our box, but he can't manage to keep it down. And he also made a little joke saying to keep betting on him to score. A lot of people bet him on first goal scorer because he's got high odds. Keep doing it because it's going to happen eventually, which would be good. He also said he could score at every other club, but not our club, which is interesting. But yeah, hopefully Zakuani will be back in the goals. But if we're scoring freely at the minute, Zakuani's in the defending, I don't really mind too much. He's also putting Gillingham first for the foreseeable future. Obviously, he's played for DR Congo for 13 years. He's played in a lot of competitions for them. Obviously, they narrowly missed out on the World Cup in the summer. It sounds like he's put that aside for the foreseeable future, maybe forever. But he wants to focus on Gillingham to try and prolong his playing career. That's good, He said he's played in the AFCON already and he's qualified for that, so he has no real desire to. He spoke to the manager and said for the foreseeable future he wants to be at Gillingham, and being a captain helped that as well because he's got a role in the dressing room. He speaks a lot about pace as well. He speaks about there being pace in the squad. He mentions 3 names in particular: Elliot List, Regan, Charles Cook and Brandon Hanlon, who I think without a doubt are the fastest 3, especially in that attack. He says it could scare anyone. He enjoys the attacking play, but we do need to tighten up, which I think everyone's addressed and noticed, and I think Lovell's obviously said he worked on that in the week. That's good. Hopefully, like I say, we can tighten up a bit at the back now. Zakuani obviously wants that protection. He's a captain as well, so he's organising back there too. He said he enjoys the way we play though, which is good. He said, where am I in my notes? Yeah, he said we need to tighten up, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be playing for DR Congo for the foreseeable future. That's good for us. He's not going away. We're not missing more of our players. But it's good. He likes our play, actually, to game of basketball. Obviously going to and fro, which might be exciting for the neutral, but I prefer to be tight at the back, and obviously managers do as well. He also speaks a bit about being captain a little bit. He says there's not one bag egg in the dressing room, and he praises the group a lot, which is nice to see. It's positive in the media this week. We'll see what next week brings. So finally, we are going to preview the Barnsley game this weekend. So obviously tomorrow we're going to be joined by Ash in a bit. He's going to talk about Barnsley a little bit, but I'm going to talk about us. Obviously, Barnsley have started very well. They're a very good side. They came down last season, so people obviously saying that they're going to be up there. Currently sit 5th with 11 points. 3 wins, 2 draws out of that, still undefeated. In terms of us, we're struggling a little bit of injuries. You know, Burn, Charles Cook and Parrott are all still out. Parrott's still a week away, Lovell said. Josh Rhys is back, though, which is good. Happy news with that. Josh Parker, there's a little bit of confusion with him. He's supposedly still with us this weekend. He put on Instagram, well, he said, see you in Antigua in 10 days, which is Saturday. So people were assuming that he was going to be in Antigua on Saturday. But it doesn't seem that way. It does seem he's going to be available for us this weekend. Obviously, TJ Bramble's got a call up as well. Zach One is staying with us. And in terms of the formation we go with, if Parker's with us, I think we probably will stick with a diamond. I think Bingham and Riley will play. Josh Rhys will probably come back in to play a bit deeper. And then Josh Parker will probably be at the top again. Which isn't necessarily ideal, but you've got to work with what you got. I put a little shout out there. Maybe a 3-5-2. Alex Lacey to come in, and then a midfield 3 of Bingham, Riley and Rhys, with a couple of strikers, which you thought would probably be, it's hard to choose from at the minute. We've got 4 really informed strikers. Brandon Hanlon, Tom Eves, Connor Wilkinson, Elliot List, Josh Parker, that's 5. Obviously that's a level selection. I know I said I wanted to stick with a diamond, and I do, but for this game, maybe with injury problems, maybe it would be smarter to go to a back 3. And although it's a basic assumption as well, you got another man back to deal with Barnsley's attack. Even though there's a lot more to it than that. There are questions of who needs a rest. Does Tom Eves need one? He didn't have a pre-season. Does Billy Bingham need one? Obviously, he's had his injury problems. Do any of the centre-backs need one? Any of the full-backs? Luke O'Neill's looks a little bit tired at times. Obviously, the full-backs are getting up and down regularly now. So in terms of the predictions, I think we'll probably see the diamond. I think Burn and Charles Cook will drop out. I think Tom Eves will drop out as well. I think Wilkinson will come in for Tom Eves. I think he'll get a start. I think Josh Rhys will play and Callum Riley will play. So my team prediction is Holy, O'Neill, Zakuani, Aymer, Garmston, Bingham, Riley, Rhys, and then Parker at the top of the diamond, and then Wilkinson and Hanlon up top with a bench of, let's do this off the top of my head, Hadler. Oh, is Ogilvie going to come in? Fuller, Lacey. Does he go with Ogilvie as a choice on the bench anyway? Will we see Nasseri on the bench still? Just trying to think of this through on my head right now, looking at this squad sheet. Bradley Stevenson may be in line for a recall. And then obviously, the other strikers that aren't starting. So I think it will be Hadler, Fuller, Lacey, Ogilvie, Nasseri, List and Eves on the bench. That'll be my prediction, assuming that Ogilvie's travelled. If not, then I think Stevenson will come back on the bench. Elliot List definitely pushing for a start. Will Brandon Hanlon have a rest as well? He's looked tired at times. Or will List be active from the bench again? My prediction, it's hard to go against Gills at this point. Barnsley are a high-scoring team. We're a high-scoring team. I'm going to go with 2-2. 2-2, a very, very bold prediction. So now we'll move on to talk a little bit about Barnsley. Barnsley themselves. We've got Ash on again. Thank you, Ash, for coming on again.
It's me.
Obviously, you see a bit of Barnsley. You have a very wide Football League knowledge. They started the season well. What have you made of their start to the season?
Well, it's been outstanding. It's not surprising because they've managed to somehow keep. Well, obviously, Bradshaw's gone recently and they lost Yeadom earlier in the summer, but the likes of Moncur, McGeehan, Moore, Isgrove, Tiam, Potts, they've managed to keep their squad that got relegated from the Championship all together, and they're all very, very. They're all top end League One players. Moore will score goals. Bradshaw obviously would have, but he's gone. Yeah, it's just superb. I mean, not conceded a goal at home, I think. They've only conceded 2 all season, and that was Scunthorpe just this weekend gone.
Yeah.
Only outscored by Peterborough. No one's conceded less. as expected, they'll be up there, top 3 for sure.
And obviously, I think you've probably answered the question now by speaking about all the players they've got. But do you think the loss of Bradshaw will affect them?
Possibly.
Right.
I don't think it will, because they've got goals from midfield. The players I spoke about before. Moore will still score. Woodrow's come in, not as proven as what Bradshaw is, or experienced, but he should still do a job in League One. He should still score enough goals for them to at least be top 6, if not autos.
Yeah. And do you think their main player is Kiefer Moore, or do you think they have a different main outlet? Obviously, Moore's going to get the goals. He's already got a hat-trick this season.
Moore's probably their focal point. He's their main goal-getter.
Yeah.
But they do have, they've got... they brought in Dougal to solidify the midfield needed. He'll be key for them for different reasons other than scoring. Moncur, when he's got his head screwed on, can create a goal in the phone box.
Yeah.
He's a talented player. Potts already proved in League 2 with Blackpool he can score goals. He's got one this season himself. So there's many assets they have. Their main probably is more. Yeah.
And in terms of weaknesses, if they've got any, what would you highlight in that area?
It's difficult. I don't know, because they've conceded the least, and they've only been outscored by Peterborough. Yeah. So right now there probably isn't any weaknesses, but I'm sure as the season goes on, weaknesses will get highlighted.
Yeah. I think at that level as well, you can, if you do have any weaknesses, like some weaknesses you can probably get away with because of the quality of the league. Like, I think us specifically, we've been, apart from the first 2 games, we've been pretty crap, and we're still 9th. So, like, the standard isn't necessarily great. What can we expect from Barnsley this weekend then? How are they going to play? What are they going to do?
Well, they've gone like many teams in England have started to go down the German route with their manager and their pressing and their attacking, quick, free flowing. Yeah, they'll come at you. They'll be direct. They're positive. Always Oakwell. They're positive. It's a brilliant old-fashioned ground. Crowd get behind them. Be a good atmosphere. Be a good game. They'll be positive, energetic, hot workmanlike as well with Dougal and the back 4. The perfect blend, really. Be difficult game.
Can I get a prediction from you? Obviously, you're a neutral. You're not a Gillingham or Barnsley fan. Can I get a prediction from you?
We'll go 3-0 Barnsley.
3-0 Barnsley. Blimey. No, I think that's completely fair enough. So overall, obviously it's still early doors, but they have looked very good. What do you expect from Barnsley this year? They're going to be up there?
Oh, no, we'll be top 6, definitely. You'd have to say Peterborough, Sunderland and Barnsley. 2 of those... Peterborough, Sunderland, Barnsley, 2 of those will get top 2. It's just a matter of who.
Yeah.
Out of those 3, I think Sunderland are the weaker of the 3.
Yeah.
Top 2, I think they should get top 2, especially if Woodrow starts firing and replaces Bradshaw like they hope he will. If that happens, then they'll get top 2.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the optimism with the prediction. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. That's our
no worries, mate.
That's our preview for the focus on Barnsley for this weekend. So that is it for this episode of the Gillingham podcast. I hope you did enjoy. Thank you again to Ash for coming on. If you're going to the game tomorrow, enjoy it. I won't be at the game. It's the first game I'm missing this season. If I find any vlogs, I'll put it out on the White Lines Media Twitter account. You can follow that, by the way, at White Lines Media. A shameless little plug there. More active on there recently. Please also do subscribe to all our other channels. Check out all of our partners as well. All links to all that good stuff is in the description. Again, thank you very much for listening. I'll see you next time, and goodbye. Up the Gills.